protecting your mind. There ain't no reason for the fantasize. No moments here in our song.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Comments from the Peanut Gallery podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Kurtz. I'm joined today by a very special guest, Mr. Jeff Lights Out Hughes from Strong Style MMA. How you doing today, my man?
I'm doing really good. How about you?
I'm doing well, man. I can't really complain. The sun's shining out here in Colorado, so we're finally starting to thaw out from some of these winter storms that we've been having.
Awesome.
Yeah, Jeff, so real quick, why don't you let everybody out there know who may not at this point know where they can follow you on social media and all of that.
I made it pretty easy, so you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, all the same thing, Jeff Hughes MMA.
Awesome, very nice. So as I mentioned, you're training out of Strong Style there in Ohio, along with the historically great, I might add, Stipe Miocic, one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. You're on a card this weekend in Kansas for Kansas City UFC. How does it feel to be making your debut as a heavyweight on a card that's being headlined with a main event by two of some of the frontline guys within the division with Derek Lewis and JDS?
Oh, it's awesome. I'm excited to make my debut finally. I've been waiting a long time to be in the UFC cage. I started this at 17 and, I knew I'd get there eventually, but it's finally here, so I'm ready to go. I'm excited for the other fights too. I'm still a fan, so I'll definitely watch the main event.
That's awesome. It's got to be just one of those feelings where you're finally there. This is a rematch. Correct me if I'm wrong. From your LFA title defense.
Yeah. This is the second time we fought in 11 months.
That's pretty crazy. That's how everything comes full circle with the debut, but. How does that feel? Because Contender Series, that was during the summertime, so what's it like having that much of a layoff?
We've actually used the layoff to our advantage. We've gotten a lot better. Been working with my coaches, Steve and Marcus, and Alex a lot. It's kind of nice not having to worry about a specific person you're training for. You're just trying to get better at the things that you do well, and the things you don't do well, you improve on those too. So the layoff was we used it to our advantage this time.
That's good to hear. Always good to make improvements in the downtime. How is it being able to train with one of the best to ever do it in your division?
I think he's the best of all time, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's great. It's not always the funnest thing to do, going with him every day, but it's definitely helps me out more than going with anybody else, I believe. He's so good at everything, at every part of the sport, and he's a very good coach as well. So when he's not getting ready for a fight, it's almost like having another coach in there with me.
That's incredible. To have that sort of resource, I feel like as someone who's making a big growth, a big step within your career, that can only work in your favor. And you have a rock solid management team too as well. Shout out to Jim Walter out there in ASTR Sports.
Yeah, he definitely he's been helping out a lot as well. He does all the hard stuff, so we don't have to worry about the fight.
What is your big, I guess, what are you looking to let everybody know by this performance on Saturday night?
I'm just trying to go out there, get the win, and show everybody I belong in there, and I'm one of the best in the world at doing this. Me and my coaches, and we all believe that I am one of the best in the world to do it, so now it's just time to show them that, what we already know is true.
Totally. So at 10-1, you've obviously experienced a lot of success to this point. What is the most critical thing for you to continue on that trajectory?
I think just listen to my coaches and follow a game plan to a certain extent. Go in there and train as hard as you can every day and prove, because nobody's perfect in this sport, and to keep getting better every day is the goal, and make it, show it on fight night when the lights are shining.
Okay. So, it seems like you kind of carry that same embodiment of, it seems like everybody that I meet from Ohio, or from that kind of the trains in the Cleveland area, all has a very, very blue collar approach, if you will. You're all very level headed. You're very hardworking and grounded within your approach. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yeah, that's perfect assessment. Yeah, we're super blue collar. If you go into our gym, there's nothing fancy. And it's nice. It's very nice. We have a lot of stuff to work with, but it's not like some of these gyms you see that are, beautiful and stuff like that. And it's all about hard work at our gym.
Who are some of who are your regular training partners outside of Stipe right now for this camp? Right now, this fight I've been working a lot with Stipe more than anybody. But we have a boxer we bring in, Alante Green. He's a very successful pro boxer in the Cleveland area. And we have a couple teammates that we go with. But besides that, I've been going with Stipe a whole lot. Stipe a whole lot. If you had to name something, obviously without show in hand or anything along those lines, but if there's been something that has been the biggest challenge for you within your pro career, as far as maybe a part of your game or some specific adversity, dealing with media, whatever, what would you say is the biggest obstacle as a professional that you've had to overcome?
Trying to stay healthy and peak at the right time. And now my coaches have it down to a science. So, and before I started going to strong style, I didn't have that exactly. Like, I just kind of trained and thought I was doing everything the right way, but it wasn't. So that's been the hardest part, is trying to be ready on fight night.
What does recovery look like for you? What are you doing for those steps?
Just trying to get a lot of rest and trying not to kill yourself every single day, but training smart, working with a strength conditioning coach, and doing everything the coaches tell me to do, man, and getting a lot of rest, and not trying to take everything so serious.
Okay. Are you doing any like cryotherapy or cupping, electro-stim, anything along those lines?
Nothing like that, and we don't do anything like that. I'm sure it's very beneficial, but like I've never set foot in a cryo thing or anything like that.
Gotcha.
We actually do a thing. It's called a polar bear run, and it sounds crazy, but it's something everybody I think should experience once. It's one of the coldest days of the year. We'll take off our shirts and go run a 5K. I guess and it's really good for recovery, so I've been told.
I would imagine, that kind of speaks to a news element related to this last weekend with Diego Sanchez talking about how he does a lot of cold therapy from principles from Iceman Wim Hof. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with who Wim Hof is or not.
No. I mean, I've heard the name, but I've heard what it is. I don't know, but yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, so Wim Hof, just to kind of give you a little brief background, he's a guy who, if you were to say there's a modern human out there that has, somewhat of a supernatural power, if you will, this guy kind of does in the way that he has resistance to cold. He's done stuff like Everest, basically with no clothing. He's done polar plunges, going into ice water and swimming for ridiculous stretches and amounts of time. But there's a lot of science that supports some sort of cold therapy, which I can only imagine helps with a 5K run there.
Yeah, and it's I'm sure it's you gotta get your body used to all that, but yeah, it's not as bad as it sounds like. Once you do it, you're happy you've done it.
Is it something that in the middle of it you just find yourself, your body adapts to it, it adjusts and acclimates itself?
Yeah, it's like that first, I would say the first half mile is the hardest. But after that, you just kind of get in the zone. You're like, okay, I'm going to finish this.
Understandable there. I kind of feel that way myself sometimes, just when I turn the wrong faucet off on the shower first. But, I just try to make it past that point.
Right.
As a heavyweight, I'm sure you don't have to or incur some of the different woes that maybe your peers have to with weight cut issues or anything along those lines, but I'm sure you definitely follow some sort of a guideline. What does that look like?
Yeah. So if I'm not watching what I eat and I'm doing whatever I want, man, I blow up pretty big. So for fight camps, I definitely have to be on point with my diet, and obviously there's no drinking beer, which is the hardest thing for me. But
you sound like you're from Cleveland.
What's that?
That sounds like a Cleveland thing.
Yeah, it definitely is. I just try to eat clean, and your body performs best when you're eating the right things. So it's that's what we do. We try to eat the right things, and yeah, you have your cheat days, but like this camp, I've been super strict, and this is probably the best I've ever felt before a fight.
That's it. So you mentioned with eating clean. Are you having like is that looking like salads, or is that like sweet potatoes, just not grains, or what? Kind of take me through a day. What does a day of meals look like for you?
This fight camp, I switched it up. I used to do a lot of ground turkey, but I've been doing actually a lot of ground beef, and I feel a whole lot better doing it. Trying to put more red meat in my diet, and trying to get vegetables. Like I'll do with my protein shakes, I blend up a bunch of spinach and blueberries and all that, and do it like that. But yeah, it's just been a lot of eggs and red meat this fight camp.
Very nice. Did you watch a lot of this last card, 235?
Which one was that? Who was the headline of that one?
John Jones, Anthony Smith.
Oh yeah. I watched the whole main card.
Watched the whole main card. What were your thoughts? What were some of your takeaways?
I thought that one of my heroes, Robbie Lawler, was fighting. I thought that was the most exciting fight of the night. It was a crazy stoppage, but that 2 minutes that they were fighting was awesome. And the main event just showed that John Jones is just he makes things look easy. It's crazy. But Anthony Smith also, and he deserves to be there like anybody else.
Definitely, shout out to Lionheart. That's my boy, X on the Chest, Factory X out here in Colorado. Coach Mark Montoya it was inspiring to see Lionheart's effort out there, and I have to give full disclosure. I'm biased because I know Anthony. I have a great relationship with him as well as Coach. I know that you guys share. Anthony is managed by Jim too as well, so I'm sure you've ran into him a time or two.
Yeah.
But it was encouraging just to see him live up to the name alone. His heart, the integrity, especially after the illegal strikes. It was awesome to see him in the moment, but obviously, we all wish that he would have came home with a win. But if you're going to, come up short, it might as well be to, the best to ever do it in your division.
Right, and the fact that he got up after that illegal knee and continued to fight, it just to me proved that he was a real fighter. He wasn't looking for an easy way out at all.
Right. Well, and the illegal knee was compounded by the kick to the head too as well. Herb said that was only to the arm, but he said it was to the head, and by the eye test, because what do I know? I'm just the guy who's watching from the broadcast view. And it looked like he kicked him in the head too when he was down on the ground first.
I noticed that as well. I thought it was a little too close for comfort on that.
But like I said,
not.
It is what it is, and he kept on fighting through it, and he was able to go the distance, which very few have been able to do in the history of John Jones' career.
Right.
And then the Robbie fight, I love that was the biggest tear for me because I've always loved Robbie Lawler ever since he blew up on the scene way back, and I've been a big Ben Askren fan and have been a huge advocate of Ben Askren coming to the UFC. That first minute, it was almost like he got F5'd or something like that, like a pro wrestling. It was crazy. How close do you think Ben was to going out?
I think Robbie was fine, honestly. I thought, the arm went limp, and from watching on the TV, it looked like he was out. And I get get exactly what Herb Dean was thinking. And then you watch the replay, and I saw it, but I thought he gave the thumbs up. So I was like, oh, maybe he wasn't out. And then they showed the replay, and I was like, he definitely wasn't out. And you don't recover that fast from going out when, I mean, he bounced up right away and was like, what's going on?
Immediately. No, he bounced up. Have you seen the video that's came out since? They do now like the thrill and the agony sort of thing that ESPN is covering, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, I saw a clip of him, like, he was, in the heat of the moment, he was mad for, 5 seconds, and he's like, yeah, it's cool, man, I get it, I understand. And that was cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it goes to show you that Robbie is he's a real, true class act as a fighter.
Right.
They just don't make him like that across the board. And
it was definitely somebody to look up to, being like that.
Agreed completely. His dialogue and the way that he approached it in the post-fight press conference too was something that any young fighter out there, I feel like, should look to as an example. Absolutely didn't go his way.
More or less try to act like that rather than the opposite, which you see a lot of fighters trying to act like Conor McGregor now, and not everybody's Conor McGregor, so it kind of looks bad on the sport sometimes.
Right, or even more recent example with TJ Dillashaw.
Yeah.
I just and I like TJ as well, but I felt like in that situation, TJ, you're forgetting the reason why there was even the controversy of you have the stoppage in the first place. You got dropped 3 times, the last of which you landed flat on your face without being able to have your equilibrium enough to put your hands in front to catch you. So I can understand why the referee would elect to stop it at that point.
Yeah, I thought that was a good stoppage, to be honest with you.
Because tell me what you think in there. If they don't stop it right there, granted it maybe was a little bit early, but correct me if I'm wrong, Henry was probably going to land another 10, 15, 20 strikes on TJ before it was eventually called.
Yeah, I mean, the referee's job in there is to make sure we're safe as we can be, So I don't see where the issue was with that one.
What did you think of the Kamaru Usman and Tyron Woodley fight?
I think he played it smart. He did exactly his game plan was, and that was to smother him and beat him up in the clinch. And I think by the 3rd round he took way control of the fight, and there was no going back after that. He was in no danger after that.
Were you surprised at the level of dominance that Kamaru had over Tyron?
Yeah, because nobody's been able to do that for how long now? And he went out there and made it look kind of easy. It was a perfect performance by him, really.
I would agree, and I personally, I don't know what your feeling is for a couple of the stand-ups from Goddard during the fight, but I thought that it was absolutely an incredible performance. This is where I've kind of learned to where, in some capacities, that I can no longer watch the fights with certain casual fans anymore either, just because I was getting a little bit irritated. I was at a buddy's watch party, and there was a couple people talking about, that it was boring with, them just with the wrestling between each other. But you guys don't even understand what you're watching.
Right.
The fact that he was able to take down Tyron, who never gets taken down, and he did it multiple times, and then was able to hold him against his will for that long, you guys are witnessing a historically dominant performance in a title fight, and you don't even know it.
There's other sports if you don't like the wrestling part of it too. I mean, if you want to see the stand up, there's other sports out there for you.
I agree completely. There's karate combat, there's Letway, there's Muay Thai, there's a lot of stuff out there if you just want to see striking. But wrestling is a very, very huge part of this game, and to neglect that or to stand someone up in that case, because what's to say that when they stand them up right then and there, that Tyron doesn't do what Tyron normally does and unloads a huge right hand that knocks Kamara out.
Right. It kind of defeats the purpose of working so hard to get that takedown, I think, if they're just going to stand it up right away.
I agree completely. I couldn't agree with you more there. And especially, because Kamaru, there's people could argue that when he fought Damian Maia, that when they separated them, and it wasn't Goddard in that fight, but I can't remember who the referee was. Maia almost had his back with one hook in, and to get that on Kamaru, within only a 5-minute window is incredible. So, to separate guys that's just, to me, that shows that you're not understanding what you're truly looking at in the grappling aspect, or maybe you're letting the crowd influence play too big of a factor.
Yeah, I was going to say that. It's almost like they're trying to make it more fan-friendly for the crowd, and it's like, it's up to the refs to have an unbiased opinion about things like that.
Let me ask you this, Jeff. Do you worry, or is that a concern at all to you going forward in the sport now that there's such this, the mega deal with ESPN and with more eyes coming to the sport in terms of advertisers, just general audience across the board? Do you think that there's going to be measures that they put into place that try to make it more quote-unquote entertaining?
I don't know if they can really change the whole the part about the fighting thing. I mean, I think they can do some different things with behind the scenes maybe. But I don't think it's going to change the way that the fights play out, to be honest with you.
Do you think that there's, just like this example, that they may be quicker to stand guys up in a grappling sort of scenario? You don't think that may come into play?
Yeah, it could, honestly. But
we've seen it from the NBA, we've seen it from the NFL. The NFL, basically, it's impossible to play defense now so that they can have exciting offense for ratings.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard to say when there's this much money now being brought into the mix at the corporate level that there isn't going to be some sort of adulteration that comes into play.
Yeah, there possibly could be. I just try to. My game is to go out there and fight, though. That's on them if they decide to change the rules up a little bit.
Understandable. So a couple of questions for you. If it's an either-or situation, would you say stand up or ground?
Stand up.
Wrestling or jiu-jitsu?
Wrestling.
Thai style or Dutch style kickboxing?
Dutch style.
Interesting. That one always has
in the world right there.
Everyone always has a different answer to that one. What I guess why is my follow-up?
They put their combinations with their punches and kicks together a little bit better. I think the Thai style is more punches to throw a real big kick, or more leg kicks, but the Dutch style is just you could get knocked out any way possible.
Understandable. I just love picking all your guys' brains out there, because everyone has a different answer as to why they make their choice with that either or right there. So it's always interesting to hear the rationale behind it.
Yeah.
Jeff, we've covered some of the stuff as far as with your fight, your background coming into it with your LFA championship. What is something that we might not have touched on that you absolutely want to get out there to the listeners?
Yeah, I guess just be ready. If it goes all 3 rounds, man, I'm going to be just as strong in the first round as I am the third. So, you don't see a lot of heavyweights that have the cardio to go all 3, and that's something we've been really working hard on, is being able to stay strong in that 3rd round. So that's something that we have if we need it.
That's awesome, my man. Well, Jeff, I really do, like I say, I want to thank you for taking the time to come on. I know that you've got a lot of media obligations all throughout the week. And thank you very much, Jim, if you're out there listening, for putting this in motion and getting us connected there. I'll be rooting for you this weekend, my man.
I appreciate you having me, and appreciate you cheering for me as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Jeff, just real quick again, why don't you hit the people off with all of your sponsors, handles, anybody that you want to throw a shout out to before we wrap up.
Yeah, just a shout out to Strong Style MMA and all my coaches and family and friends, and working on some sponsorships now, and hopefully I can tell you more next time.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, man, anytime. I would love to do a follow-up, have you back on whenever you like. It's an open invitation. That's what I like doing about with this whole Comments from the Peanut Gallery project, is I try to give anybody that I work with, any of the athletes out there, as much autonomy as possible. Anything that you need from us, from the platform, we're more than happy to help you with, my man.
Hey, thanks a lot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So this is Comments from the Peanut Gallery podcast. I just want to throw a quick shout out there to ASTR Sports Management. Look for my man Jeff Lights Out Hughes this weekend on the UFC Kansas City card. He'll be out there looking to put a stamp on his performance in his UFC debut. I want to also throw a quick shout out to Factory X. We've got some big announcements coming up with a few of the Comments from the Peanut Gallery projects, including our short films that feature Chris El Guapo Gutierrez, who is going to be fighting on UFC Nashville, as well as Ian the Hurricane Heinisch, who will be on UFC London. And we've also got a variety of fighters that will be fighting at the St. Patty's Beatdown in North Platte, Nebraska on March 23rd as well, including but not limited to Yusuf the Moroccan Devil Zalal, Austin Jones, and Nate the Savage Smith. So thank you guys out there for following along. This is Comments from the Peanut Gallery. I'm your host, Jordan Kurtz, signing out.